All right. There's some exciting things I want to go over. First off, since we're talking about Exodus, here is Moses over here in Egypt, and Pharaoh finds out he killed an Egyptian. He's out to get him. So Moses flees clear over here to Aqaba, and then he comes down to the side of Saudi Arabia, right in here, because that is where the Midianites were. You see the Red Sea. Here's where they crossed the Red Sea. And right over there, you will see Midian. All right? And that's where our Torah portion today is Yitro or Jethro. And what's amazing, if you go to Saudi Arabia, this is the very well that Moses met Zipporah and her other sisters. And we're going to be going there next year if you want to go with us. And then, of course, while he was there in Midian, shepherding for his father-in-law Jethro, boom, he sees this burning bush. And he's wondering, what in the world's going on? Well, you look at Exodus 2:15 on your notes. It says, when Pharaoh heard of this matter, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh, dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. So that was the well. And then look at Exodus 3:1. Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. But just so you know, it doesn't necessarily mean priest in English. That could be a wrong translation. The word Kohen, as you're going to see in just a minute, can also be the ruler, the leader. Even the sons of David were called Kohens, and he's from the tribe of Judah. But then what happens? Look at Exodus 3:8. God tells Moses, I've come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, to bring them up from that land to a good and large land, to a land flowing with milk and honey. Here we see God is giving Israel the promised land. And then I want you to watch as this unfolds. In Exodus 3:12, it was at the very same spot of the burning bush. God says, I will certainly be with you. This will be a sign to you that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain. That means the place of the burning bush was the very same place several months later when God comes down with fire at the first Shavuot or Pentecost. So let's review. How many of you know how long the plagues lasted? How many have wondered how long the plagues lasted? They lasted 5 weeks. And I'm going to prove that to you. I can prove it biblically very easily. But Moses was born on Adar 7. Moses died on Adar 7. And when Moses was 80 years old, it was on Adar 7 that he appears before Pharaoh and the waters turned to blood. 5 weeks later, on Nisan 14, this is when they put the blood on the doorposts. The next day, they're packing their bags and they're all fleeing Egypt. 7 days later, they're crossing the Red Sea. And then what happens? They start whining. We want food. So God sends the quail. And then they whine. We want water. And so this is the rock of Horeb, they say, which is the very rock you'll see when you go to Saudi Arabia with me. But I want to make this even simpler, so I made a calendar. Okay, here, Shavuot is the previous month here in red. When we get to green, this is the first of Adar. And we see on Adar 7 is Moses' birthday, the day he died, and you have the 7 days of bloody water. Then comes the frogs, then the lice, then the flies, then the cattle die, then the boils. Okay. Now, from Adar, it's leading into Nisan. And so then you have the fiery hail, then the locusts, then the 3 days of darkness. And I even know when every day these occurred. These are your Shabbats. And then after the 3 days of darkness, God says, go collect the loot. And they're looting the Egyptians. And then here on the 10th, they grab the lamb. On the 14th, they slay the lamb. On the 15th, they pack their bags. And then on the 21st, they cross the Red Sea, and the flood overcomes them. And then you'll notice the first of Iyar. That's the second month. So here is, let me do something here real quick. Just a second. I've got to. Okay, here we go. Okay, so So then we come to here. Now this is Iyar going into Sivan. The reason I know the exact days is because the Bible tells us it was on the 15th of Iyar that they were whining and complaining for the food, and God gave them the quail at night, and he said, in the morning, the manna will fall from heaven, and it was for 6 days, but not the 7th day. So we know the 15th had to be a Shabbat because the manna began on the first day of the week and went for 6 days. And when you simply go back with the calendar, you can see exactly what days everything happened. But so they had the manna fall, and then they were whining about the water, and then came Amalek. What's amazing about this, on the biblical calendar, Iyar is exactly when the war in 1948 took place. The 1967 war took place exactly the same day that Amalek attacked, which is why you want to be on the biblical calendar. You can now see the patterns. And then what do? Then they come over here, and they're camping at Mount Sinai, and this is our Torah portion, Yitro. So if you remember, Moses left his wife over in Midian, but this is in Yitro's neighborhood. So when he finally gets back there, they're camping. Yitro comes, says, how's it going? I heard all these great things. And then Moses says, everybody wash your clothes. In 3 days, God is going to come down onto the mountain. And that is Sivan 6. So boom, the fire falls on the 6th of Sivan. Now, if you remember, we're going to go back. You can see on the 26th of Iyar, we have Amalek attacking because of all the whining and the complaining. And then that brings us to our Torah portion. Yitro. There's no J's in Hebrew. There's no J's in Greek. There's no J's even in English until King James. But take a look at this. Let me see where I'm at. Okay. Exodus 17, verse 6. God says, I will stand before you on the rock in Horeb, and you'll smite the rock. Water's going to come out that the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. And then look at what we find in verse 8 through 11. Then came Amalek, fought with Israel in Rephidim. And Moses said to Joshua, choose out men to go out and fight with Amalek. And then he says, tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. And Joshua did as Moses said, fought with Amalek. Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. It came to pass, when Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. And when it had done his hand, Amalek prevailed. So we see the war with the Amalekites was 2 days. Now, how many of you have ever moved from another state or to another state? One of the things you want to do when you decide where to locate is, what are the people like? You know, are they Republican or Democrat? No, or are they religious or not religious? Is there a lot of crime? Well, what's amazing is Israel had been in Egypt for 215 years. No one in the Canaan knew who they were. They were slaves. Who cares? Well, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, why do people go to war? Typically, over land. They want resources, just like right now with Russia and the Ukraine. There's a lot of natural resources. Okay, Egypt were the Israelis. They had no land. Why would Amalek attack the elderly, the weak, and the orphans They had no wealth. They had no possessions. They had no land. It was out of pure spite, which is why God says he will have war with Amalek in every generation. But if you were Jewish and all of a sudden you get attacked by foreigners, that'd make you question every foreigner. Well, and like I said, let's go to Exodus 18:1, where the Torah portion begins. Yitro, the priest of Midian, he was Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses, for Israel, his people, that the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. Now, if you look up the word Cohen, like I said, it could mean a prince or a chief ruler. But what's interesting is here's the first evidence of Jew and Gentile coming together. And look at Exodus 18:5. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife to Moses in the wilderness, and that's where he was encamped at the mountain of God. So Moses arrived on the 1st of Sivan. He was camping there for about 3 days, and then God says, wait 3 more days. But look at this. In 2 Samuel 8, verse 18, it says, David's sons were chief rulers. The word is Cohen. So here's proof. Cohen doesn't always mean priest. It could mean a chief ruler. Therefore, Jethro may not have been a priest. He might have just been the king or the ruler. Now, who were the Midianites? Do you remember who the Midianites were? Where'd they come from? Abraham and Keturah. After Sarah died, he marries Keturah. And the Midianites, so they're relatives, for heaven's sake. And guess what? Moses married a Midianite. Now, this is in Genesis 25:2, if you don't know. But now, look at Exodus 18:12. And Jethro has many names. He's also called Hobab. He's also called Ruel. You're going to find he has many names because some are titles. They're not names. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, made a burnt offering to God. Aaron came with the chiefs of Israel, and they had a meal with Moses' father-in-law before God. And then he gives them great advice. He says in Exodus 18:19-21, listen to me. I will give you counsel, and God will be with you. Stand before God for the people. You bring the difficulties to God. Teach them the statutes and the laws. Show them the way in which they must walk, the work they must do. Moreover, select some able people who fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness. These are the keys for elders. These are your keys for leaders in any congregation. And put them to be over rulers of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. As a matter of fact, if you look at Psalms 1 and 2, it says, blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the ungodly, doesn't stand in the way of sinners, or sits in the seat of the scornful. What is his delight in? Oh my goodness, you can find delight in the Torah? Yes. And in his Torah, he meditates day and night. How many of us meditate in the Torah day and night? Oh, wow, I thought it was done away with. Okay, look at Exodus 18:23-24. He says to Moses, if you do this, and God commands you, isn't that nice? He gives recognition, but only if God tells you, then you will be able to endure, and all these people will go to their place in peace. So Moses, he listened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he had said. You know, Moses was very humble. Okay, and this is important. Anyone who thinks they know it all, you're already telling everybody you're wrong. But here's something I want to bring out that has the most gigantic prophetic implications that will happen in the next 2 months. So I want you to pay real close attention to this prophetically. In our Torah portion, look at Exodus 23, verse 30 and 31. God says, little by little, I'm going to drive these nations out until you have increased, and then you are going to what? Inherit the land. Right here in this Torah portion, God is promising the land to Israel. And look what he says. I will set your bounds from the Red Sea to the Sea Philistia. Where is the Sea of Philistia? The Philistines settled in the Gaza Strip. It's the Mediterranean Sea is the Sea of Philistia. So God right here is promising them he's going to kick out the Philistines, a.k.a. Palestinians, who were named after the Philistines. God says, I'm going to give you this land from the desert to the river Jordan. I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand. You'll drive them out before you. You'll make no covenant with them, not with their gods. They will not dwell in your land, lest they make you sin against me. For if you serve their gods, you're in a heap of trouble. Now, watch this. Here we go. Here is that phrase in Hebrew, and I want you to notice some things. Okay, right there, say Yom. Yom is sea. Yom is day. So don't say Yom Kippur, say Yom Kippur. If you say Yom Kippur, you're saying the Sea of Atonement. Okay, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. This is Yom, okay, Yom. And look at this. You have two seas. You have Yam Suf, which is the Red Sea, and you have Yam Plishtim. Notice it's not an N, as in Philistine, it's an M, and it's Plishtim. Now, look at this, Yam Plishtim, Sea of the Philistines, Yam Suf. That is up there, and it is the Red Sea. But here's something that you have to know. Here is the Gaza Strip, where the Palestinians live, who are named after the Philistines. Here is the word Plishtim, which became Philistines. But do you notice this word on top? I want you to notice, let's get rid of the Vav and get rid of the top, but look at this. The Mem, the Yud, the Shin, the Lamed, the Pei, that top word is the word Polshem, where you get the word Philistines. And guess what Polshem means? Invaders. That never was the Philistine land to begin with. They were like from Crete, and they invaded that area. They are the occupiers. Isn't that amazing? But wait, there's more. If you remember, Exodus 3:12, Moses is at the burning bush, and God says, you're going to serve me on this mountain. So it was on this very mountain, about 3 months later, they're serving God. They get the commandments, all right? And what's amazing about all of this, too, is if you go to Saudi Arabia, you'll see the burnt top that's still there on the mountain. Amazing. Okay. But it was the 6th day of the month of Sivan. Most Christians think Pentecost began in Acts, not knowing Pentecost was 1,500 years earlier. The Jews were the first Pentecostals. They were. It was called Shavuot. They were commanded to be in Jerusalem for that day. So the big day is Sivan 6. When the fire fell, the commandments came, and God said, I'm giving you the land. Do you see why Sivan 6 is so important in history? The day God coveted the land with them. Okay. Are you buckled in? Got your shoulder straps on? The United Nations has a big question about what are we going to do with Palestine. And the United Nations says we need to have a peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine. Therefore, back in November 25th, they raised this question, and guess what? This coming June 2nd is when the UN is meeting to decide on the two-state solution to finally solve the Middle East problem. But guess what? In Zechariah, this isn't on your notes, you can write it down, very important verse. Zechariah 1, 18 and 19 is when the red horse of war in Revelation is riding. And Zechariah sees a vision, and it says, I raised my eyes, and there were 4 horns. And I said to the angel who talked with me, what are these? He answered me, these are the horns that have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. These are the 4 entities that are trying to divide the land of Israel. Guess who I believe these 4 entities are? They are called the Middle East Quartet that began in Madrid, Spain in 2002, made up of the EU, the UN, the US, and Russia. And God says in Zechariah's vision, these 4 craftsmen are coming to terrorize, bring terror to every country that is trying to divide the land of Israel. Well, let's go on. Here we are at the United Nations, the question of Palestine. And they say this conference coming up June 2nd is entitled High-Level International Conference for the Peaceful Settlement of the Question of Palestine and the Implementation of the Two-State Solution. And it's going to be held from June 2nd to June 4th. Wow, guess what? Wow, from 3 to 6 p.m. It begins on June 2nd. Here we are, this coming June 2nd. It's Sivan 6, the very day that God gave the command not to divide Israel. The UN is meeting to divide Israel. Same day, which is why you want to be on the biblical calendar, which is why we have that available to you. Because you don't know if something is random or if it is God. All you do is look at the calendar. This is huge, guys. This is what could bring the red horse of war. I am not against Trump. I am not pro-Trump. I am pro-Bible. Okay? Now, all of Trump's cabinet, most of them are all totally against the two-state solution, which is good news. But again, Trump does his own thing. And what we don't know, if on June 2nd, if Trump wants to be known as the one who solved the Middle East problem, win the Nobel Peace Prize, and he brings a two-state solution, all hell is going to break loose here in the United States. This is why you need to be praying that everyone influences him not to implement the two-state solution, because June 2nd is the very day. I don't know if you knew this, but do you remember when Samuel was upset because they wanted a king like all the nations? God entered the covenant on Pentecost in Exodus 19. They wanted a new king on the very same day. They wanted a divorce from God the very same day they got married. This is huge. And now what are we seeing? The biggest event in human history prophetically is about to happen June 2nd. And where will America fall? Okay, now, Exodus 19, 1 through 3. Here it says, on the third new moon, after the people of Israel had gone out of the land of Egypt, on that day they came to the wilderness. That means Sivan 1. And they set out from Rephidim. They came into the wilderness. They camped in the wilderness. Israel camped before the mountain, and Moses went up. Most people don't know this, but Moses doesn't go up and stay for 40 days. He goes up and down and 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 up and down. Blah, blah, blah. Look at this. We just read Moses went up. Now look at this. It says, Exodus 19:6, God says, you will be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. This is what I want you to tell the children of Israel. Great. I just climbed 5 hours, and now I got to tell them one sentence? Give me the rest of the download. But no, he goes all the way back down, and he says that. And then in Exodus 19:7, so Moses came. He called for the elders of the people. He laid the word before their faces that the Lord commanded them, and they said, everything the Lord has said, we will do. And so now Moses has to go back up. What's amazing is the very moment God has been awaiting has finally arrived. God has been waiting since the dawn of creation itself, but Adam and Eve sinned. And so now he wants to marry Israel. The marriage certificate, or the ketubah, is the Torah. The marriage canopy is the chuppah, or the cloud will be the heavens themselves. And you know what's interesting? Here, how many of you, first time you get married, you want to have the band, the orchestra, all the hoopla? Well, so does God. So he strikes up the thunder. He strikes up the lightning. I'm entering this great marriage ceremony. You know, he has the mountain quaking. And then he sets the mountaintop ablaze. Well, and so Exodus 19, verse 8 and 9. Moses goes back and returns the words of the people to the Lord. And the Lord said to Moses, I'm coming to you in a thick cloud, and that the people may hear when I speak with you and believe you forever. And Moses told the words of the people to the Lord. Okay. And now, Look at Exodus 19:10. The Lord said to Moses, go back down. Sanctify them today and tomorrow and let them wash their clothes. What is the importance of washing their clothes? This is highly significant. It's, in other words, it's getting rid of your own righteousness because you got to put on God's righteousness. Look at this is the Hebrew Heritage Bible, New Testament, Revelation 3:5. The one who overcomes is going to be clothed in white garments. I will not erase that person's name from the book of life. I will confess this individual's name before my Father and before his angels. We're going to get robes of righteousness. Revelation 3 goes on to say in 17 and 18, and realize this is a church talking. I'm rich. I prospered so much, I don't need a single thing. Not even you, God. And God says, you don't recognize in reality, you're wretched, miserable, poor, blind, naked. I advise you to buy gold tried in the fire, which only comes from me. So you may be rich, but buy also white robes in order to clothe yourself so that your shameful state of nakedness won't be revealed. And buy eye salve and anoint your eyes so you can see. Well, it's amazing. If you go to Matthew 22, 9 through 13, God is having a wedding. And the people that were invited wouldn't come. So God says, I don't care. Just go out and invite everybody. He says, go into the main roads. As many as you find, invite them to the wedding feast. Those servants went out into the street and gathered together all they found, evil and good. Guess what? We don't do the sorting. God does the sorting. We just are to get everybody in the boat and then let God sort things out. And it says the wedding hall was filled with dinner, and the king came to look at the dinner guests, and he noticed someone who was not wearing a wedding robe. Oops. And he said, friend, how dare you come in here without a wedding robe? And the man kept quiet. And the king ordered his servants, bind a man on foot, throw him into outer darkness in the place where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. I believe that is the tribulation. And I believe those who want to come to God in their own righteousness with their own works are going to be going through the tribulation compared to those who have on his righteousness. It's not the good work you do for God. It's the good works you allow him to do through you. And then in Zephaniah, actually, all these prophecies in the New Testament, there's nothing new in the New Testament, okay? It all comes from the Tanakh. Look at Zephaniah 1, 7 and 8. Be silent at the presence of the Lord. The Lord, for the day of the Lord is at hand. The Lord has prepared a sacrifice. He's consecrated his guests. It will happen in the day of the Lord's sacrifice. I will punish the princes, even the king's own sons, and all who are clothed with what? Foreign clothing. God's own kids are going to be punished if they try to come to him in their own righteousness. Matter of fact, in Luke 12, 35 through 37, God says, stay dressed for action, keep your lamps burning, and be like the men who are waiting for their master to come home from the wedding feast. I don't know if you caught that, but I'm going to emphasize something that you may have not hit you, but I'm going to hit you right between the eyes. It says, so they may open the door to him at once when he comes and knocks. Blessed are those servants whom the master finds awake when he comes. Truly I tell you, he will dress himself for service and have them recline at a table, and he will come and serve them. This is telling you there are Christians that are going to go through the tribulation because when God knocked, they didn't answer. And then it says, when he returns from the wedding feast. Wow, they miss all the events going on in heaven. But if they're ready the second time he comes, they at least get to make it to the wedding supper. Wow. Now, look at Exodus 19:11. Here's what God says, be ready for the third day. The third day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people on Mount Sinai. Well, guess what? We're about to enter the third millennial day from Messiah. And we are in that time frame, and he is about to come down in the sight of the entire world. Matter of fact, look at Hosea 6, 1 and 2. Come, let us return to the Lord. He is torn. He will heal us. He is stricken. He will bind us up. After 2 days, he will bring us to life. Guess what? 1948, the second day, Israel became a nation. And then it says the third day, he will raise us up and we'll live in his sight. Messiah rose on the third day. And guess what? He's going to return on the third day. And I don't know if you know, we've already entered the seventh millennial day right now. Well, it's 5785. How can that be? Easy. That means 5,000 years have gone by. We are 785 years into the sixth day, which means it's 78% over. It's sunset on Friday. It's evening and morning. The seventh day begins now at sunset on Friday, which is evening of the sixth day. We are at evening of the sixth day. Okay, and then Exodus 19, 12 through 15, God says, set bounds to the people. Take heed to yourselves. Don't go up into the mountain. Don't even touch the border. Whoever touches it is going to die. I don't want a hand to touch it. They'll be stoned or shot through if it's beast or man. And when the trumpet sounds long, they're to come up to the mountain. And so what does it say? Moses did what? 5-hour hike down. He gets down there, and the Lord comes down on Mount Sinai at the top of the mountain. And the Lord calls Moses, get back up here. 5 hours. He gets back up there. Exodus 19, 23 and 24. Moses says to the Lord, the people can't come to Mount Sinai. You commanded us, saying, set the bounds around the mountain, sanctify it. And the Lord said to him, get out of here and go back down. And I want you to get some friends and come up with you. Oh my gosh, 5 hours down. Let's get down. 5 hours back up. And so in Exodus 19, 25, Moses goes back down. Exodus 20, God spoke all the words. But can you imagine? He's going up and down, up and down. How old is Moses? 80. He's 10 years older than me. And he's so full of energy. I hope I can have that same energy 10 years from now. I'm trying. And so Exodus 20, God spoke all these words, saying, I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You know, a lot of people want the 10 Commandments posted. The problem is the Catholics have one set of 10 Commandments. The Jews have another set of 10 Commandments. And then there's another set of 10 Commandments. The problem is the word commandment is the wrong word. It's not the 10 Commandments. It's the 10 words. And so, according to Judaism, the first words are, I'm the boss. I'm the Lord your God. If you don't recognize that, the other commandments don't matter. And in Matthew 12, 34, it says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Do you know the Torah is the only books where God spoke his heart? All the rest were visions and dreams the other prophets had. So we have to understand when we want to get rid of the Torah, we're trying to get rid of the very love letter God gave us describing who he is. Wow. Because out of the abundance of his heart that he spoke the Torah. Matthew 4:4. He said, it stands written, a person will not live by bread alone, but rather on every word that comes from the mouth of God. So what do we live on? Every word that comes from the mouth of God. The Torah is the only recording of every word that came out of the mouth of God. It wasn't out of the mouth of Moses. Moses just wrote down what came out of the mouth of God. Exodus 34:28. Moses was there with the Lord for 40 days. And 40 nights he didn't eat bread or water, and he wrote upon the tables the words of the covenant, the 10, not commandments. It's the 10 words. It's devarim. It's not mitzvot. Now, how many times did Moses spend 40 days and 40 nights? How many times? 3 times. He was up there 40 days and 40 nights. He comes down for the golden calf. And look what happens in Deuteronomy 9, 16 through 18. Moses says, I looked, and behold, you sinned against the Lord. You made a molten calf. You turned aside quickly out of the way, which the Lord commanded you. And so I took the 2 tables, cast them out of my 2 hands, and I broke them before your eyes. And I fell down before the Lord as at the first. Another 40 days and 40 nights. I never ate bread or drank water. And then he's there for a couple days, and then he goes up the 3rd time for 40 days and 40 nights, coming down on Yom Kippur. And then 1 John 5, 2 and 3. It says, by this we know we love the children of God. That is when we love God and do what? Obey what he tells us to do. This is the love of God. We obey his commandments. And guess what? His commandments are not a heavy burden, a heavy yoke. We follow what God says because we are his kids. We don't do what he says to become his kids. If you tell your son to mow the lawn and he doesn't, and you hire the neighbor kid to mow the lawn, that doesn't make the neighbor kid your son. You can do all kinds of works for God, but if you're not his son, it doesn't matter. In Exodus 20, verse 6, God shows mercy to thousands of them that love me and keep my... Who gets mercy? the ones who keep his commandments. But wait a minute, I don't need mercy if I'm keeping the commandments. Oh, yes, you do, because all of us blow it. But if you throw out the laws and say, I can keep sinning because I got Jesus in my pocket, that doesn't work that way. If you keep the commandments, you don't need mercy. So the statement is referring to those who fail at times and they're trying to keep them. Mercy is never shown to those who continually disobey, feeling God's laws don't apply to them. Is a judge going to show mercy to someone? Let's say he's an arsonist and he goes to court and he's got 4 matches in his hand. And the judge says, I will show you mercy if you give me the matches. No, they're mine. He's not going to show him mercy. So finally, the last verse I got here is Exodus 28 through 11. Remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. Okay, let me just show you some last slides. The word mitzvot, which is commandments, the root words mean to join. When we do the commandments, that means God is already doing the work and he's asked us to join him in the work. It's not like a city job where you have 10 people watching one guy work. Okay? The very word mitzvot is to take God's yoke, and Matthew 11:29, God says, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Why? Because he is the ox, and we get to go along for the ride. Okay, my ways, just like a bicycle built for 2. God does all the fast pedaling. We're just along for the ride. But he wants us to join him. So doing the commandments, you get to have the joy of joining God. And when it talks about his Sabbaths, it's not just Shabbat. He's referring to the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Shavuot, the Feast of Trumpets, the Feast of Yom Kippur, the Feast of Sukkot. When he says my Sabbaths, all of these are his Sabbaths. With that said, let's stand. Hope I didn't go too fast. I want to make sure we get plenty of time for Steve. So we're going to pray, and then we're going to take a break, and then in 15 minutes is all. We're going to be back, and we're going to have Steve Cioccolanti. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father King, we thank you so much for this Torah portion that we can read and understand how much you love us, and you've given us the Torah to protect us, and we love that protection. And Father, I want to thank you for all of those who want to be a light to the nations, to take your Torah to the nations. So we're thankful for everyone here who brings tithes and offerings into your kingdom. God, it's not about us. It's about you working through us. You said you want to magnify the Torah and make it honorable. That's what we want to do. So we thank you for all those live streaming from around the United States, around the world. And I pray they too would see the importance of investing into the light of the Torah. In Yeshua's name, amen. Together, blessed are you, Lord our God, creator and king of the universe. You have blessed us with your Torah of truth. You have blessed us with the whole counsel of your living word by the power of your Holy Spirit through the completed work of Messiah Yeshua. You alone have planted among us life eternal. Blessed are you, Lord our God. Amen. Take a break. And if there's visitors here, let them go through the line first downstairs.